right. So today we are finishing chapter 6. Right? And there's a couple of topics that we haven't covered yet, starting with this idea of an empirical. Okay, let me try that again. Empirical formula. Now, this sounds really fancy and daunting, but it's actually something that we've already been working with and you already understand, right? So an empirical formula is just the lowest whole number ratio of atoms in a compound. Okay. So that sounds kind of crazy, but what we're essentially saying is, let's say we have this molecule, right? So you guys already understand this is the chemical formula, right? And what is the ratio of carbon to hydrogens?
1 to 4.
1 to 4. Does that make sense, guys? Everybody with me? Yeah? So all we're saying here is that the chemical formula and the empirical formula are often the same, right? But not always, okay? And that's where we're going to differentiate here. So here we had 1 carbon for every 4 hydrogens, right? But you can imagine that we could have a chemical formula that looks like this, right? Now, is this the lowest whole number ratio of atoms? No, right? So our ratio in this case is the same, right? It's still 1 to 4, but now we have an integer, integer? You guys, I have no idea how to spell that word. That's like one of the ones that kills me every time.
I think that's right.
Integer.
Integer.
I think so. Whatever. This is going to be on the internet for the rest of my life. Oh, winning. Cool. Anyways, so this is an integer multiple of the empirical formula, right? So when you have an integer multiple of the empirical formula, that's called the molecular formula. Okay? So this would be the molecular formula for this compound, right? And this would be the empirical for the same compound. Does that make sense, guys? So...
On top is the empirical?
Sorry?
The one on top is the empirical one?
Yes. Yeah. So even though we're talking about this molecule, right? This molecule doesn't give us the lowest whole number ratio of atoms possible in this compound, right? The empirical formula does. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
So a molecular formula is some integer multiple of the empirical formula, right?
Okay.
Cool. So let's look at one more example, right? So if we have our good friend glucose, right? This is the molecular formula. I hope you guys will all agree. So what would the empirical formula be in this case?
C1H6O1? Oh, or just, yeah. H2. Oh, wait.
Divide by 6.
So you can divide each one of these guys by 6, right? And that gives you the empirical formula. Does that make sense, guys? Cool. So again, we're not really learning anything new about the chemical formulas. We're just kind of giving some new names to stuff, right? Questions about this? We're okay. All right, so then what we want to talk about from there, ooh, cool focus. Is that gonna come back?